Luca asks if we plan to cover the somewhat new Firefox-based browser Floorp. Have you looked into this at all, Henry?
No, I'm just not super. I'm not interested, and that's not because I am still going to look into it for the record. But the reason I haven't already looked into it is I'm not super interested, mainly because on our ends, the context for people listening to this on our ends, I get emails about like tons of projects like this on a weekly basis, and so for me, I'm kind of used to getting a, oh hey, we have this new, fork of this search engine, or a fork of this browser, or a fork of this blah blah blah, and then we talk about it, and it's like, okay, well, this isn't like a good enough, messengers as well, this isn't a good enough selling point that makes this a huge deal in the long run. um and I'm going to look into Florp, for the record. I haven't, but I think that it got a lot of hype mainly because of that CTT upload.
Yeah.
And for context as to why we're very cautious and we take a lot of time to like look at services, CTT did a similar video about Thorium where he was like, "This is awesome, everyone should try it," and then they fell behind months on security updates. There was that weird like CSAM issue, I think, with Thorium, and then they posted like furry stuff. It was bizarre, and now like no one's touching it with a
Yeah.
50-foot pole. So yeah, we don't really like we don't like instantly jump on new projects just because they're getting a lot of attention. We kind of like wait things out, which is why typically we're slower to like cover that kind of stuff too. Um, but you talked about this because you
Absolutely.
just made a browser tier list video on your personal
Yeah.
channel, and you talked about Florp, and you were like, you kind of mentioned this too, how like, I don't know, what's your take on it? I guess I'll leave it.
All the thorium stuff. It's definitely a case of like all of these browser forks and new messengers are projects that come and go pretty frequently, it feels like, and not a lot of them stick around or are taken super seriously in the long run. And so one of the main things I would always look for when looking at these projects is like how long they've been around, how many people are working on it, what's their track record. And Florp has no track record because it is somewhat new. As far as I know, it just came out like in the second half of last year, if I remember correctly. And that's just a couple months of uh, history that we can't really base anything on. So I don't know really anything that's going on with them.
I'm pulling up here on the Techlore criteria, which is, we put like loose criteria together for our resources page, and one of them is pass the test of time, which is number 8. And
Hmm.
this speaks to this because again, if I wasn't like in the digital rights space every single day, then I probably wouldn't know about like all the projects that are constantly coming and going. But because we receive emails every day about this kind of stuff, like we have to have this rule in place because we something I have to be, and we get criticized for having very critical reviews, but I think it's much better to put out a critical review and properly touch on like the issues of the service as well in a review, instead of just touting like all the benefits of a service, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what we're going for. Um, and yeah, I think the downside to that is we can't be as quick and we can't make like super timely content for new services like this. But I think it also means we generally have a pretty good track record and we try to avoid mistakes like the thorium mistake, which
Yeah.
yeah, like I would feel so guilty if I put out a video and it like caused literally hundreds of thousands of people to like start hopping on something, and then it turns out in 3 months it's like a terrible thing to suggest to them. So freaks me out. And again, I'm not saying that is
Yeah,
Florp, it's just we're going to be very patient with Florp. So again, it might be
absolutely.
fantastic, not like I'm not hating on it, I just want to wait and see and be patient with my assessment.